Hey guys, welcome back. It is nighttime here. It is December 30th today, and my brother's been kind of in town, and he's brought me my mother's terribly non-maintained vehicle. So I've been really busy just maintaining that and changing everything out. So it's been quite a hectic week. So we haven't been able to do too much work on the house, but I will say a couple things. I did buy some polyiso board. So not on sale, but there is a government rebate. So every year they give you 30% back on your taxes. And I think it's up to $1,200. So essentially you can buy $4,000 worth of insulation and get 30% off via your taxes. So today's the 30th, and I bought all the pieces that weren't damaged at one store, which apparently was just 6. But after doing some calculation, it seems like for this floor alone, I'm probably going to need somewhere around 50 to 53 pieces, which seems like a lot. This is 1.5 inch. It's R9.3. So it's polyiso instead of XPS. And the reason why I'm using polyiso is it has a higher R value. And also, actually, that's inaccurate. XPS actually technically, no, this is a higher R value per inch. Actually, that is right. And also, it is more resistant to temperature change, which, I mean, unless I'm in a fire, I guess that's not really that relevant. But this has a wider temperature range, so people like to use these for roofs. So my goal is to do at least 1.5 inches along all the walls. Maybe do a 1/2 inch of EPS or XPS in front of it to kind of cover the seams, because polyiso over time does shrink. But before we do that, I'm going to probably be doing some demo, removing some whiteboards and stuff like that, and bringing some wood up here to kind of mock up what those rooms are going to look like. So a couple of you guys did mention, why not just put both rooms next to each other instead of having them separated? And there's a very good reason for that. I'm not sure if you guys have ever lived with a roommate, and one of the most annoying things living with a roommate is actually your sleep schedules. So if one guy is up and the other guy is trying to sleep, or vice versa, or in any essence, it is very, very difficult to fall asleep or do whatever if you guys share a wall. So if the two are separated, the nice part is there is quite a distance to travel for that sound. And then if you do staggered studs on both interior walls, technically facing inward, then in theory, any noise outside of the room should technically, very little should make it into the actual room. So let's say you have an exam, or let's say you have a big interview, or whatever you may have, and your roommate is playing video games the whole time. You're able to kind of mitigate that noise. So that's the reason why I chose to put them separately, just because if you have two grown adults in here living, they're going to get on each other's nerves, especially if somebody's doing something in one room that's particularly loud. The other person can hear it and they can't fall asleep. So that's the reason I chose to do rooms like that. In terms of like swapping the kitchens around and whatnot, someone said, why not put the kitchen over here instead of in this corner? The main reason for that is really plumbing. So if you look, there's a drinking fountain here. There's a bathroom here. So there's actually plumbing in this entire wall. So if I were going to put a kitchen sink in here, I wouldn't have to worry about the drains or the feeds, because all of that's right here. If I moved it over here, then I'd have to run water line under the ground. Well, technically in the roof of the first floor, all the way around, and then I have to run new plumbing lines, and then you have to worry about if the slope is correct, if it's going to meet code. You're going to have to get a plumbing permit, then you're going to have someone come in here and inspect the thing. So that's a lot of work. So if we stick with the original plumbing lines and we stick with the original drain lines, we don't have to pull any permits. So that's nice. Third, somebody mentioned you should do pocket doors instead of barn doors. And honestly, I would enjoy doing pocket doors also. I think those are nicer. But the big issue here is this is a cinder block wall. And you can see they cut this in to put that fire extinguisher in here. So for me to do a cinder block wall with a pocket door, this wall has to get knocked out. So either this wall has to get knocked out, rebuilt with you know, a stud wall in which I could put a pocket door into, or I have to build a false wall in front of this wall and then put the pocket door in that. Meanwhile, the second one seems easier. I'm going to lose at least, you know, 4 to 5 inches of, you know, hallway space, which I guess isn't the end of the world, but this wall lines up with that doorway, so it's going to be slightly inward, which might look a little bit weird. And to be honest, we're already going to be taking up more space using double studded 2x6 walls instead of doing just 2x4 walls for sound mitigation. So hopefully that, you know, kind of clears some of these things up. Also today, I guess our goal really is to just kind of get an idea of what we need to demo, some of the demo stuff. Also, the last 2 days we lost power. There's a huge storm, and for some reason this block just didn't have power. So we're kind of behind on schedule. So I'm going to try to demo some of this stuff and then see what's behind it and then come up with a plan of how to insulate all this stuff and move forward from there. All right, so some of the superficial outside pieces have been removed. I guess I paid a little less because there's some, never mind, these are plastic quarters, they're fake. Okay, anyways, yeah, this is not really attached in any way. It's just hanging here by these hooks. So that should be pretty easy to remove. These have a couple little screws in the middle here. This post here is probably the biggest confusion, and I'll show you what's going on. So it's actually boxed out. Someone boxed this out, which is, you know, kind of nice how they did it, but this was finished afterwards. So the screws going into the wall are in the inside here, and this is hollow. So, I mean, I could try to rip this apart, you know, from here and hammer it out or something like that, but I don't think it's worth it. I think it's probably easier to just take my saw and essentially just go up this end here, just rip it all the way to the ceiling so I can see the exposed, I can expose the fasteners, and then I could just cut that out. So like I said, the real goal really is to remove everything on this wall and then start insulating. And I really don't like how these outlets are done. I guess they're fine. I'll find a way to make them a little bit more, I would say up to code, because it's just literally, they knocked a hole in the ceiling and they just ran a row mix wire straight down here, and it's just, you know, flopping in the wind in there. I guess that's fine. But when we put the stud wall in, we'll have to either put a socket extender on that to move the plugs out to the wall, or probably would be better is actually just running them through the stud wall and tacking them down every 24 to 48 inches. And, yeah, so it's kind of cold and late, so I'm gonna try to finish this up tomorrow morning and then get this pipe out. I think I'm just gonna have to cut it. That seems like probably what I'll have to do. I suppose some of these might be unions. I could try to remove them, but all of this is going to recycling. So I don't really think preservation is really a key aspect here. And I don't know the condition of this pipe. Like, it might be cracked in certain places. We don't know. So once all of this wall is completely cleaned, we can start trying to mock up the the polyiso and how we're going to fix it to the wall. Realistically speaking, it could just be friction fit between this and the studs. So that should be fine also. We'll see. I mean, I could glue it to the wall technically. I don't think that would really hurt. Because eventually at some point in time, I guess, if someone does want to expose this wall again, they're definitely going to have to paint it. I mean, they didn't paint around a bulletin board, which honestly probably would have been pretty easy to do. So, I mean, I don't know. And then obviously, you know, like under here is not painted. So you can see that's just bare block. So I'm assuming this has been here this whole time. So we are just going to rip that up, and then we're going to peel back this carpet and see what's under here. So that is the job for tomorrow. And then I did have someone come by and vacuum all of this out already. So in theory, this should be clean of, you know, oils and whatnot. So we should be able to disconnect it and remove it from the wall. So I am absolutely looking forward to having a clean wall. There's a couple things that are kind of nice, but also inconsistent. And there's a plastic fork on the ground. So I'll drop that in the radiator. So if you look up here, the ceiling, oh, it's hard to see focus. There's a gap on the lower truss. Some of those are more than 2 inches and some of them are under 2 inches. So if doing 2 inches of polyiso, I would want to be able to move it all the way up so it fits into that gap and then basically butts up against the lower decking. And then the rest of the cracks will happen is I'll just do spray foam. And that spray foam, that closed cell spray foam is extremely picky. So according to spray foam experts, you can only spray it between the temperatures of 60 degrees and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's a really short window. So we might not be able to do that even, you know, here, unless we're able to heat the space up to like 70. Or we could wait till springtime and then also, you know, continue, you know, spraying when the weather's nice. But the surface needs to be at least 60. Can't be above 80. So we have to measure the temperature of the internal surface and then measure the air temperature. And even though I did get those mini splits in, I technically don't want to install them just yet, just because whatever construction debris and dust that's going to be here, if those are installed, even if they're covered, some percentage of that is going to make it onto them. And once you turn it on, it's just going to get filled with, you know, foam, whatever it may be. So that is something that is probably something, you know, that I'll do after the spaces are kind of finished. And then we don't want to do finishings realistically until the temperature is stable. So like you don't want to do finishing when it's super cold. Then when it gets warmer, it'll start to, you know, expand and it'll crack. Or if it's super hot and then you do the finishings, it'll shrink and then it'll crack. So there's something that I might also consider while I'm here is maybe doing some leveler. I don't know if this floor is perfectly level or not, just to get a nice surface to kind of mount to. But those are future things, I think. And I would like to also remove a lot of these wires in the ceiling, so it's not a huge confusing mess of what's going on in there. All right, so that's going to be it for today. You guys will probably see me here again tomorrow. So that is a huge eyesore though, that yellow. There is something else I could do. I know there's a masonry paint called Dry Lock. And Dry Lock is supposed to keep moisture and humidity on inside the block. A lot of people use that for basements. Now, honestly, I don't recommend it for basements just because basement walls technically need to breathe. They will absorb moisture and they need to breathe. The only way they can breathe is coming inside. They can dry to the inside because on the other side is dirt. Dirt holds moisture. This, on the other hand, in theory doesn't matter because this is a building. We're on the second floor, so it could dry to the outside. So if I did put Dry Lock, that would be kind of like a vapor barrier, and that would allow the block to get wet from the outside, but it'll dry also to the outside without pulling that moisture into the house. I don't know yet. That's also something to think about. I think Dry Lock is supposed to be put on bare block, which obviously aside from the bottom here, the rest of it's not bare. So I don't think it's going to actually make a difference. And also Drylock is expensive. So just thoughts. We'll see what happens. Once again, I have to pick up probably, I think we calculated 53 boards. Me and my brother. My brother's in town, by the way. I'm doing work on his car. But I think we calculated it's going to take 53 boards, 39 just for the first layer. And then we have another 2.5 feet above into the truss area. So those are going to be cut slits. And ideally speaking, I would like to do 2 layers. That's why I did 1.5 instead of just a solid 2. So we could stagger the seams. Polyiso over time does shrink. So if 2 pieces are butted up against each other and they both shrink, you're going to have a gap. And that gap is going to leave heat or moisture to go through. So even if it's taped, I think that's also kind of like something that's, you have to worry about. This is, surprisingly, I don't know how I managed to put these all upside down, but 1.5 inches is R9.3. So a XPS would be R10 for 2 inches. So I think that should be fine. And then I think this is EPS. I don't know. But this is, for 1/2 inch, it's R2. So if I do 2 layers, that and this EPS, in theory, I should be able to achieve a R11 on that wall. Obviously, with the windows open, it's going to be lower. But the window hose make the entire wall assembly lower. But like I said, this is just cheaper per board. 4 by 8 foot board like this. It's about $12. Maybe I think $13. It might be $12.95. I forget. And then this board is $40 a sheet for 1.5 inch. They do not carry 2 inch in stock. And then the 1/2 inch board is, I think, $20 or $22. I mean, part of me is thinking to myself, is it worth cheaping out on the insulation board just ever so slightly? Because the inner layer is going to be that. But the R difference is really not that big. This is R2.9 for 1/2 inch, and that is R2 for 1/2 inch. I guess percentage-wise, it's probably a decent size. But I'm talking about $7 to $9 per board. And keep in mind, a stud wall is going to be built inside of that. So I'm probably putting R14 in that stud wall of fiberglass. So, I mean, you have R11 plus 14, that's 25. I mean, that's more than R20, which is kind of what's recommended. The roof matters more. You want an R49 to R60 on the roof. So is it worth getting that extra 0.9, almost R1, right? That extra R1 in the entire system, which will cost me $7 additional per board. So let's say that's $70 for 10 boards times 5. That's $350 in boards plus another 21. $371 extra plus tax, which is 7%, to get our extra R1 on the walls out of a R25 normally. So that, I feel like that's really diminishing returns. So that $350 could be spent towards fiberglass insulation bat. I don't know. I'm just talking to myself now and rambling. But I will see you guys tomorrow. Talk to you soon. say. We have obviously the mini split that still needs to come off. It's like some sort of concrete on the ground. I'm not really quite sure. Here the protrusions coming out of the ground here. Looks like concrete to me. They just punched a hole through that. So I don't know if there's some sort of self-leveler that needs to be put. So this is really bad. I don't know what they used. It's like some sort of epoxy. It's real hard to get off. And you can see there's a gap, so they'll need to get caulked. I did remove this off camera because it was kind of sketchy. It was held in with Tapcons, so I actually had to saw it in half. Most of the time we couldn't really record it because we have this propane heater that's really loud. And here are the remaining pipes. And you can see right here, that froze and burst. And some of these other pipes actually weren't even connected anymore. So that basically sums it up. So this guy has to get scraped up. All of this needs to be cleaned up. You can see there used to be a wall here. And obviously where these strips of carpet were, there were walls here. So we kind of have a preliminary plan. I don't know what's going on with any of these conduits, with these raceways, because there's actually no power in any of them. So originally I was thinking maybe transition this into the stud wall. Oh, also this is interesting. This is the chalkboard that was here, and it says Rock 92372. So if Rock, you're out there, we have found your message in the year 2025. Also, this adhesive is really annoying, and I'll have to grind some of this off. Some of the adhesive, actually, what's funny is didn't even touch the chalkboard, because you can see this part's flat. That glued onto it. That glued onto it, and this is perfectly smooth. So they dabbed this on and didn't even touch anything. Same with this. Same with this. And back in the 70s, they were shimming with popsicle sticks too. So that's pretty cool. Well, that basically sums that up for today, and I'll keep you guys updated. Thanks.